Karen turned, her grin eerie in the moonlight. "Oh, hey Jack, just adding a little fun to the lake." The man next to her glared silently. "You're trespassing again," I snapped, stepping closer. "Get out, now, or I'm calling the police." Karen laughed. "By the time they get here, it won't matter." Then she kicked one of the barrels. It rolled down the bank and splashed into the water. I watched as oily liquid seeped out, rippling across the surface with a strange, iridescent glow. Panic surged in my chest. "Are you insane?" I yelled. "You're poisoning the water." Karen just smirked. "Say goodbye to your precious lake." I reached for my phone to call for help, but the man lunged at me. We crashed to the ground. My flashlight flew into the dirt as we grappled in the dark. He was stronger, but I was furious. I fought back with everything I had, finally grabbing a broken plank from my ruined dock and swinging it hard. He dropped. Karen shrieked and ran for the truck. "This isn't over, Jack!" she screamed as the engine roared to life. They tore down the road, leaving behind a floating barrel and lake water smeared with unnatural color. I stumbled toward the shoreline. The liquid spread faster like a rainbow of death across the surface. My heart broke. This lake was my sanctuary, and now it was under attack. I called 911, breathless. "They're trying to destroy the lake. Please send help, now." But as I ended the call, a sharp hissing sound came from the barrel. Then a boom. An explosion ripped through the lake. A column of fire and water erupted into the sky. The blast threw me back. My ears rang, my vision blurred. When I opened my eyes, flames danced across the lake, reflected in the smoky night air. My Lakea Havina was burning. And as I watched it burn, through the thick smoke, I forced myself upright. That's when I spotted her truck perched on the hill like a vulture watching its prey. Karen was still there, watching, smiling. The flames leapt higher across the lake, twisting and snapping like they were alive. Their reflection lit up my cabin windows in vivid orange and red, making it look like the entire house was ablaze. I coughed hard, the acrid smoke burning my throat. The stench of chemicals was overwhelming, an acidic blend of toxins and burning wood. "Jack, Jack!" someone called out behind me. I turned and saw Mark, my contractor friend, running down the slope. He had a fire extinguisher in one hand and a heavy crowbar in the other. His truck headlights cut through the smoke behind him. I saw the flames from the road. He shouted, "What the hell is going on?" "It's Karen," I rasped, my voice raw. "She dumped chemicals into the lake, set it on fire." Mark's eyes widened. "What kind of maniac?" Before he could finish, the fire surged toward the boathouse. The dry, aged wood ignited instantly, sending a wave of searing heat our way. We both staggered back as the boathouse lit up like a funeral pyre. "We've got to stop it from reaching the cabin," Mark shouted over the roar. I nodded and ran for the garden hose, dragging it to its full length. Mark turned the nozzle on the cabin walls, soaking them down. I grabbed buckets, filled them from the rain barrel, and threw the water over the dry grass around the structure, trying to form a wet line to slow the spread. The fire devoured the boathouse roof, sending embers flying into the night. Sirens rose in the distance, this time coming fast. The fire snapped and hissed as it crept toward the trees. If those pines ignited, the whole forest could be lost. I grabbed a shovel and began clearing brush, carving out a firebreak. My hands blistered and lungs burned, but I didn't stop. Finally, a fire truck screeched to a halt on the gravel road. Firefighters spilled out, blasting jets of water at the blaze. The chemical fire fought back, spewing out foul black smoke, but little by little, the water started to beat it down. An officer approached and pulled me aside. It was Daniels. "Jack, what happened here?" Still gasping, I said, "Karen." She showed up with some guy. They dumped barrels into the lake and set it on fire. His jaw clenched. "Do you have proof?" I showed him the video I'd managed to capture Karen and the men unloading the barrels. Her threats caught clearly before the explosion. Daniels nodded grimly. "This is more than enough. Arson, environmental damage." "She's not walking away from this." I pointed toward the hill. "She was up there, watching." "She left just before the blast." Daniels radioed in. "We'll find her by dawn." The fire was finally under control. The lake was scorched black. The boathouse was a pile of cinders. My dock, gone. Ash blanketed the ground like gray snow. I stood there at the water's edge, hollowed out. This place had once been my sanctuary. Now it looked like a battlefield. Mark walked up and laid a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, man." I shook my head. "I'm not backing down. She wants me broken but I'm still standing." Mark gave a determined nod. "Then we fight back." Later that morning, I got to work. I called environmental agencies, my insurance rep, and my lawyer. Karen thought she could destroy my life and vanish. She thought wrong. The state's environmental office promised to dispatch a team to assess the lake. Ms. Piercy, my attorney, assured me she'd file for a restraining order immediately. "Document everything," she said. "Every message, every act of intimidation. People like her eventually hang themselves if you give them enough rope." I agreed, but I also knew Karen wasn't the kind to wait for courtroom consequences. She preferred the direct route. Around midday, Rick showed up, walking slowly up the driveway like a man carrying the weight of the world. He looked exhausted, a face pale, eyes bloodshot. "Jack," he said quietly, "I need to talk to you." I stepped aside. "Come in." He collapsed into a chair at my kitchen table, rubbing his face with both hands. "She's out there," he muttered. "I don't know where, but she's hiding, plotting." I tried to reason with her, begged her to stop, but "She's not the same woman I married. She almost killed me the other night," I said flatly. He nodded slowly. "I know. And now she's obsessed with this idea of revenge. She keeps saying you embarrassed her, that you need to be taught a lesson." My stomach turned. "Do you know what she's planning?" Rick hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled paper. "I found this in her car," he said. I unfolded it. A rough sketch of my cabin covered the page. Circles marked points around the perimeter. Scrawled words filled the margins. "Cut power. Disable cameras. Enter silently." I felt the blood drain from my face. "She's planning another break-in," I muttered. Rick gave a weary nod. "She won't stop. Jack, you need to prepare for the worst." I locked eyes with him. "Then help me stop her." He looked down at his hands. I don't know if I can. She's still my wife." I stood up. "Rick, she's dangerous. You know that. If you really want to do the right thing, then you need to choose a side." He didn't respond, just stood and left without a word. That night, I fortified everything. I reinforced the doors and windows with extra locks and wooden braces, installed a brand new camera system, set up motion sensors around the perimeter. By the time I finished setting up the motion sensors and floodlights, the cabin looked more like a stronghold than a home. But as night closed in, the silence grew heavier. Every crack of a twig or whisper of wind outside had me gripping the shotgun tighter. Sleep was out of the question. I kept watch by the window, eyes locked on the tree line. At 3 a.m., one of the motion lights at the back of the cabin flicked on. I grabbed my shotgun and crept silently to the rear door. On my phone screen, the security feed showed a shadow creeping slowly and deliberately toward the house. It was Karen. She was dressed head to toe in black, approaching like a predator, something clenched tightly in one hand. I muttered under my breath, "Not tonight, Karen." Before I could react, the power cut out. Everything died at the lights, the cameras. The cabin plunged into complete darkness. I heard the door handle rattle. Then a glass shattered. I raised the shotgun, heart pounding, finger tight on the trigger. A shadow slipped through the broken window. "Karen," I said coldly, "don't move another inch." She froze, then let out a quiet, chilling laugh. "Oh, Jack. You really think you can stop me?" She lunged forward and I fired. The shotgun blast shattered the silence, the flash catching her wild grin for a split second before she dropped to the ground. The pellets shredded the wall behind her. I racked the shotgun again, adrenaline roaring in my ears. "Stay down, Karen," I warned. "Don't make me do this." But she didn't listen. She moved fast and low, knocking over a chair as she dove behind the kitchen island. Shards of glass glinted around her like sharp confetti. "You missed," she sneered. "I can hear right you're afraid." My grip tightened on the gun. "You broke into my home. I warned you." Her laugh echoed through the dark like something unhinged. "This isn't your home anymore, Jack. It's mine now. And you're going to understand that." I edged toward the breaker panel, trying to restore power. Every step creaked, broadcasting my position. Then came a sudden crash, the metallic clang of something hitting the floor. I swung my flashlight toward the sound and saw a crowbar skidding across the tile. She'd been armed. I aimed at the noise, but she was already gone again. The silence that followed was thick with menace. Then her voice came, sing-song and bitter. "You never should have said no to me. No one says no to Karen." The scent hit me a moment later. Gasoline. My gut turned cold. I swept the light to the far corner of the room and saw her tipping a gas can onto the floor, the liquid spreading fast. "What are you doing?" I shouted, stepping closer. She looked up slowly, her eyes gleaming in the beam of my flashlight. "If I can't control this place," she said, "then no one gets it. You'll go up in flames with it." I fired again, this time at the floor near her feet. The blast cracked through the air, smoke filling the cabin. She screamed and scrambled backward, slipping on the slick gasoline. Then she bolted, dashing out the back, disappearing into the night like a ghost. I ran outside, flashlight sweeping the woods. The only sounds were frogs calling in the distance and my own panicked breathing. She was gone. For the second time that week, I called the police. When the deputies arrived, they found the shattered window, the gas trail, the chaos she left behind. Officer Daniels was tight-lipped and furious as he took my statement. "She's escalating," he said grimly. "You know she's not going to stop, not until she gets what she wants or until she's behind bars." "She's not just a threat," I told him. "She's completely lost her mind." Daniels met my gaze. "Then we're done waiting. We'll set up patrols around your property. But Jack, if she comes back a broken bar, you do whatever you have to do. Protect yourself." Morning came, but I didn't rest. The stench of gasoline still hung in the air. My mind kept replaying her voice, her laughter, the way she vanished into the darkness. Around noon, Mark arrived carrying supplies. "We're turning this place into Fort Knox," he said, dropping reinforced locks, extra cameras, and more sensors onto the table. As we worked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every whisper of leaves made me spin around, expecting to see her, standing with that demented smile. While we were reinforcing the front windows, Rick showed up again. He looked worse than before, like a man hollowed out. "She's gone completely off the rails," he said. "I can't reach her anymore. She keeps ranting about how you've ruined everything, a broken bar, and how she's going to make you pay for it all." "Then help us stop her," I said. He hesitated but finally nodded. "I'll try, but you should know she's not doing this alone anymore. That guy she brought with her, he's dangerous. I don't even know who he is, but he follows her orders without question." That night, the cabin felt like a trap. Every door wired, every window secured. Mark stayed the night, shotgun resting across his knees. Rick remained outside in his truck, acting as lookout. Around midnight, the first alarm shrieked. Ding, ding, ding from the side of the house. I snatched up my gun and rushed to the window. A shadow moved just beyond the trees, darting quickly, staying out of reach of the lights. Then, another alarm triggered at the back. They were circling, testing our defenses like predators. "They're here," I whispered to Mark. We moved quietly, weapons at the ready. Our hearts thundered in our chests. Then a voice cut through the stillness, a Karen's voice, a syrupy sweet, but laced with menace. "Come on out, Jack. You can't hide forever. Let's end this." I stayed silent. She let out a laugh, cold and cutting. It sent a shiver down my spine. "Fine," she said mockingly. "Then watch this." A flare shot up into the sky, casting a harsh red light over the yard. In that sudden burst of brightness, I saw Thema, Karen, and a tall stranger, both standing ominously close to my propane tank. My gut twisted. "No!" I shouted, sprinting for the door. Mark yelled after me, "Jack, don't!" But I was already moving. The man struck a match. I raised my shotgun and pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the night, knocking the match from his hand. The flare flickered out, and darkness swallowed them again. Screams rang out as they disappeared into the trees. The propane tank remained untouched for now, but something in me knew the worst wasn't over. Not even close. The following day, a team from the environmental agency arrived. They tested the lake water and confirmed what I'd feared. The chemicals Karen had dumped were already poisoning the ecosystem. Fish were dying. Cleanup would cost a fortune. "This qualifies as environmental terrorism," the agent said grimly. "Whoever did this is facing serious prison time." I could only hope that justice would come quickly. That evening, my phone rang. It was Daniels. "Jack, We found Karen's truck abandoned near the old logging road. No trace of her or the man, but we're widening the search. As dusk settled over the woods, I sat on the porch with Mark and Rick. The stillness was suffocating. We all felt the tension, the waiting. She would return. We knew that. And just as the moon rose, we heard it. The low growl of an approaching engine. A black SUV with no license plates rolled slowly down my driveway, its headlights slicing through the dark, blinding us. Mark gripped his shotgun tighter. Get ready. The vehicle came to a halt. The door opened. Karen stepped out, clad in black, her expression calm but her smile cold and sharp. She raised her hands as if in surrender, but her voice oozed venom. Jack, she said smoothly, you've left me no choice. This ends tonight. From the passenger side, the tall man appeared. He was clutching something gleaming in his hand, a Molotov cocktail. Karen gave a wicked smirk. Hope you enjoy the warmth. Before we could react, the man lit it and hurled it toward the cabin. The burning bottle spun through the air like a fireball. In that brief moment, everything slowed to the flickering flame inside the glass. Karen's twisted laughter, the cold dread crawling up my spine. Then a crash. The Molotov hit the cabin wall and exploded, flames racing up the dry wood, igniting the night in an inferno. The heat slammed into me like a wall. Get the hose, I shouted. Mark was already moving, yanking it free and blasting water at the flames. But it wasn't enough. The gasoline Karen had spread earlier only fueled the fire's hunger. Rick stood frozen, torn between fear and guilt. Karen, stop this, he yelled. You'll kill them. She just smiled, the firelight dancing in her wild eyes. That's the idea, Rick. He destroyed my life, now I destroy his. You're insane, I shouted. She tilted her head. No, Jack, I'm finally free. The tall man lit another Molotov. I didn't wait. I fired at the shotgun roared, and the bottle flew from his hand, bursting harmlessly in the grass. He staggered back, cursing, his arm bleeding where the pellets hit. Karen shrieked, you'll pay for that. She yanked a small pistol from her jacket and pointed it at me. My pulse stopped. Mark dropped the hose and took aim. Put it down, Karen, he yelled. She laughed again, the sound wild and unhinged. You think you get to command me? I own this neighborhood. I own everything. The flames climbed higher, licking the roof. Smoke burned my lungs as I stepped toward her. Karen, listen to yourself, I called out over the roar. Look around. This is over. Let it go. Her hand trembled, but the gun didn't drop. You humiliated me. You ruined everything. I've got nothing left. Rick moved between us. Hands up. Karen, please, he pleaded. This isn't you. We can still fix this. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Her expression softened. Rick, a broken bar, she whispered. Then it vanished. Her face twisted with rage as she shoved him aside. Get out of my way. Sirens wailed in the distance. Karen turned sharply toward the sound, panic flickering in her eyes but not enough to stop her. You called the cops again? She shrieked. You really think they'll save you this time? She raised the pistol and aimed it straight at me. I slowly brought my shotgun up, careful not to startle her, but ready to act. Sweat poured down my face as the fire behind us roared louder, the heat pressing in. Jack, duck, Mark shouted. At that moment, Rick lunged and grabbed her arm. Bang! The gun fired, the bullet grazing past my shoulder. The force of the shot threw Karen backward. She and Rick wrestled for control, the weapon skidding across the ground. Karen screeched like a wounded animal, kicking and clawing. But Rick held tight. This is over, he shouted. Stop it, Karen. The tall man tried to charge forward. I met him halfway with a solid kick to the chest, sending him sprawling. Mark aimed his shotgun at him. Stay down. Karen broke free of Rick and bolted for the SUV, grabbing another Molotov from the back. Her hand shook as she fumbled for a lighter. If I can't have it, no one can, Karen shrieked, raising the flaming bottle in her trembling hands, ready to hurl it straight into the cabin's doorway. The wailing sirens were closing in fast. I steadied my aim, heart pounding but breath even, finger tightening on the trigger. Karen, I said firmly, one last plea. Don't. She turned toward me, her face twisted with ragia and through. Bang! My shot rang out, striking the Molotov midair. It burst in a fiery explosion, harmlessly away from the cabin, sending flames shooting into the sky. Karen let out a scream as the blast knocked her off her feet and into the lake. The surface hissed where fire met water. She flailed, coughing and sputtering. Rick rushed toward the shore, wading in to pull her out just as police cruisers screeched to a halt behind us. Red and blue lights danced across the chaos. Officers jumped out, weapons raised. "Drop your guns." "Hands where we can see them." Mark and I slowly lowered our weapons and stepped back. The tall man tried to resist but was swiftly tackled and cuffed, screaming profanities as they hauled him away. Karen was dragged out of the water soaked, shivering, and still spitting fury. "You'll regret this, Jack," she screamed as they restrained her. "The HOA will ruin you." "This isn't over." Daniels arrived, eyeing her with nothing but contempt. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for arson, attempted murder, and trespassing," she screamed all the way to the squad car, thrashing like a child having a tantrum. By the time the fire crew extinguished the last of the flames, I sat down on the cabin steps, utterly drained. The place was scorched, but it still stood. The lake, though darkened and reeking of chemicals, mirrored the flashing lights like shattered glass. Rick sat next to me, head in his hands. "I'm sorry, Jack. I should have stopped her before it got this far." I rested a hand on his shoulder. "You tried. That's more than most would have done." Mark stood nearby, arms crossed, shaking his head. "She's finished, Jack. She won't be hurting anyone for a long time." I looked out toward the horizon, the first light of dawn painting the sky. "She thought she could control everything," I murmured, "but in the end, she lost it all." Daniels stepped forward, offering a weary smile. "It's over. She's not coming back." I nodded slowly, finally exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Good. I'm done living in fear." Weeks passed. Slowly, the lake began to heal. The environmental agency cleaned the water, replenished the fish, and helped restore what had been damaged. My insurance covered most of the cabin repairs. Just like Daniels said, Karen stayed locked up, facing a long sentence. The HOA promptly removed her from her role, and for the first time in a long while, the neighborhood felt quiet, a broken bar and safe. One peaceful morning, I stood at the edge of my rebuilt dock, gazing across the calm, golden water as the sun rose behind the trees. For the first time in months, I truly felt peace. Mark joined me, hands in his pockets. "You did it, man. You made it through." I gave him a small, tired smile. "Yeah, I survived." Karen. Rick moved away not long after, choosing to start fresh somewhere far from the wreckage of his past. He wrote to me once, thanking me for helping him see the truth about the woman he once loved. As I stood there, a gentle breeze brushing against my face, I reflected on everything we'd endured. The battles, the loss, the fear. People will try to control you, twist you, break you, burn everything you care about. But if you hold your ground, a broken bar, if you don't give in, a broken bar, you come out stronger. Karen believed fear would be her weapon, but in the end, it was her own fear that destroyed her. And the lake? It was still mine. "Move aside. I'm allowed to use this lake however I please." That unmistakable screech could only belong to Karina, the notorious president of the HOA, loud enough to send birds fleeing from the treetops. She stood boldly on my deck, robe half hanging open, clearly ready to create a scene. The sun blazed above, and the lake behind me sparkled like polished glass. This was supposed to be my peaceful escape from the chaos of city life, a place to breathe, to relax. Instead, I was face to face with a storm in sunglasses, wearing a grin that made my blood boil. "Karen, this is my property. You can't just barge in here like it's yours," I said, my voice steady though my hands shook, partly from frustration, partly disbelief. She stepped closer, wielding the dreaded HOA clipboard like it was a sword. "You know the rules, Jack. The lake is part of the community's shared landscape. I'm simply enjoying my right to be here." I raised an eyebrow. "Shared landscape? The lake is on my property, Karen. I have the deed to prove it." But she wasn't fazed. With one sharp tug, she loosened her rope. She wasn't bluffing. "You need to leave now," I warned. She laughed. "Sharp, cruel, or what? You'll call the police?" "Go ahead. Try me." "I'm serious, Karen." "Leave." "Oh, I'm serious too, Jack," she sneered. "You can't stop me." And then, right there on my deck, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "Yes, I'm at the lake cabins," she said dramatically. There's a man threatening me. I feel unsafe. I stood frozen. What was happening? I hadn't touched her. I hadn't raised my voice. Yet here she was, flipping the script and playing the victim. Behind us, the lake shimmered in eerie silence, as if mocking me. Minutes later, the wail of sirens shattered the calm. Karen folded her arms, looking smug and satisfied. You're finished, she said. What happened next will make you question everything. Let me rewind a bit, so you understand how we reached this insane moment. My name is Jack Miller. I'm 54 years old, an IT consultant who works remotely. That's why I bought this cabin 3 years ago, a cozy wooden retreat tucked in a corner of the forest, surrounded by pine trees and overlooking a crystal clear, spring-fed lake. I worked hard and saved for years to afford this place. It's my refuge, my pride and joy. At first, life here was a dream. Mornings were peaceful, afternoons were spent fishing, and nights ended around the campfire. Then came the HOA. Suddenly, there were rules about everything: what color your fence could be, how high your grass could grow, how soon you had to bring in your trash cans. I didn't mind at first. I like structure. I follow rules. But Karen? She was something else entirely. She's in her late 40s, with a stiff blonde bob that barely moves, oversized sunglasses that seem glued to her face, and a walk like she owns the world. She thrives on power. Her husband Rick couldn't be more different. Quiet, polite, keeps to himself. But Karen? She's a hurricane disguised as a neighbor. When I first moved in, I tried to make a good impression. I introduced myself and even brought homemade cookies. She gave me a once-over and said, "We'll see if you fit in." That should have been my warning. Over time, she began to test me. She'd walk her dog through my backyard, claiming it was part of a shared trail. She'd leave passive-aggressive notes about my cabin being too rustic. I ignored it, figured it wasn't worth the fight. Then she started using my lake. At first, she'd come alone in the early mornings to fish. I caught her once and politely explained the lake was on private land. She argued, said water was a shared resource. I stood firm. She stormed off. Weeks later, she returned with guests. Loud music, floaties, drinks, and the whole party set up, all on my land. I asked them to leave. She called me selfish. That's when I realized that this wasn't just about the lake. Karen wanted control. So, I installed security cameras. I didn't want conflict, but I needed to protect myself with proof, just in case. Which brings us back to that day. The sirens drew closer. Karen adjusted her robe and lifted her chin like a martyr awaiting praise. I stayed still, calm. I knew the truth. 2 officers stepped out of the cruiser, one older, stone-faced, the other younger, more curious. Karen ran up to them, clutching her robe like she was the victim in a courtroom drama. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man threatened me. He refused to let me enjoy the lake. I feel unsafe." The older officer turned to me. "Sir, is that accurate?" I replied evenly. "No, officer, she's trespassing. I have everything recorded on my cameras." Karen gasped, full of fake outrage. "He's lying. He said he'd hurt me if I didn't leave." The younger officer asked, "Ma'am, did he touch you?" She hesitated. "No, a broken bar, but he intimidated me." I pointed to a camera on the corner of my cabin. "It's all recorded." She walked onto my property and started threatening me. For just a moment, her expression slipped. Then she recovered, leaned in, and whispered something to the officers. Their demeanor shifted. The older officer turned back to me. "Sir, we'll need to review the footage, but for now, I'm going to ask you to stay back while we sort this out." Karen smirked. Then suddenly, she charged at me, yelling, "You're not taking my freedom." I stepped back in shock as the officers grabbed her. "He attacked me," she screamed. "He's dangerous." The younger officer glanced from her to me. Something clearly wasn't adding up. And that's when one of my cameras captured something neither of us expected. The camera footage revealed something shocking, something that would flip the entire situation on its head. As I played the clip on my phone, the officers leaned in. Their eyes widened. Karen caught a glimpse of the screen, her face drained of color. But before anyone could react, a sharp scream rang out from the direction of the lake. It wasn't Karen. Whatever tension was hanging in the air shattered instantly. That scream sliced through it like a knife. Everyone froze. Karen, the officers, Even me. The sound was high-pitched, panicked, and clearly coming from someone else. The younger officer spun toward the lake. "Stay here," he barked, then bolted toward the water. The older cop wasn't far behind. Karen's grip tightened around her robe as she stepped back, visibly shaken. "What is happening?" I yelled, sprinting after them. Down by the shoreline, the water was violently churning. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, was flailing helplessly in the middle of the lake, his head barely staying above water. He was drowning. I didn't think I just reacted. I kicked off my shoes and dove in. The water hit me like ice, but adrenaline drowned out the shock. I swam hard, every stroke fueled by urgency. Behind me, I heard Karen cry out, "That's my nephew, help him." I reached the boy just as his arms slowed. I grabbed him under the shoulders and started pulling him back toward the shore. The officers waded into the water to meet us and helped carry him out. The boy coughed violently, vomiting lake water. He gasped for breath, clinging to life. Karen collapsed beside him, her voice breaking. "Ethan, sweetheart, are you okay? Talk to me." The boy coughed again and nodded weakly. "Yeah, broken bar. I fell off the dock," he choked out. The older officer turned to Karen, his tone sharp. "Why was he out here alone?" she stammered. "Broken bar. He was supposed to be with me. I didn't realize he came down here on his own." His expression darkened. "This is private property. What was he doing here without the owner's permission?" Karen turned on me, like this was somehow my fault. "Because this lake should be open to everyone. If Jack wasn't so stingy, Ethan wouldn't have been so far away from me." I stared at her, stunned. "You're kidding, right? Your nephew nearly drowned because you were too busy arguing and preparing to skinny dip on land that isn't even yours." Her face twisted, shame shifting into fury. "Don't talk to me like that. You're the reason all this happened." The younger officer stepped between us. "Ma'am, enough. That boy is alive thanks to him," he said, nodding toward me. For a second, I thought she might acknowledge what I'd done. Instead, she stood, straightened her robe, and hissed, "This isn't over, Jack. You'll regret this." The officers exchanged a look but said nothing. They helped Ethan into the cruiser, wrapping him in a blanket. Karen followed them, still muttering under her breath. That evening, I sat alone on my deck, watching the last sliver of sun slip beneath the trees. My pulse still hadn't settled. It had been one of the most surreal days of my life. Before leaving, the officers had given Karen a stern warning: stay off the property, keep her nephew away from the lake unless I gave explicit permission. But I knew Karen. Warnings wouldn't stop her, they were just fuel for her next move. As I sipped a drink, I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. I had literally pulled her nephew from the lake, saved his life, and yet, somehow, I was still the villain in her eyes. Her ability to twist reality was almost to broken bar impressive. This was meant to be my sanctuary, my quiet haven. Now it felt like the front line of a war. I picked up the phone and called Mark, my friend, a local contractor, and my fishing buddy. He already knew about the Karen saga. When I finished explaining the day's events, he whistled. "You've got to be kidding me. She called the cops while trespassing on your deck, and her nephew almost drowned." "Mana broken bar," he said. "You better be careful. Karen doesn't take losses lightly. She's going to come back swinging." "I know," I said, letting out a long breath, "but I'm not giving up. This land is mine." Mark laughed. "That's the spirit. Want me to swing by this weekend? We could install a few more cameras." "Not a bad idea," I said, my eyes drifting to the dark waters beyond the trees. The next morning, I was woken by pounding at the door, hard, impatient knocks. When I opened it, there she was, Karen, fully dressed in her HOA outfit, clipboard clutched tight. "We need to talk," she said, her voice icy. I crossed my arms. "No, we don't." She didn't wait for an invite, just stormed past me into the cabin. "I'm filing a formal complaint with the HOA. You're in violation of several guidelines." I actually laughed. "For what?" "Saving your nephew?" Her eyes narrowed to slits. "For being hostile, for creating an unsafe environment, for harassment." I just stared at her. "You have got to be kidding." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a threat. "You don't understand, Jack. I run this community. If I say you're in violation, then you are. You think saving Ethan makes you some kind of hero? It doesn't." You humiliated me and nobody humiliates me. I stayed calm. Karen, you're trespassing again. Get off my property. Her lips curled into a wicked smile. Make me. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen and froze. Security alert. Motion detected. A broken bar by the boathouse. Someone was back there. I turned slowly toward the window. A shadow shifted near the edge of the lake. Karen followed my gaze. Her smile deepened. Oh, she said. What's going on, Karen? I demanded, eyes locked on hers. She only smirked wider. You'll find out soon enough. Then she turned and walked out, leaving my front door hanging open like a warning shot. I raced toward the boathouse. The shadow I'd seen was gone, but something was clearly wrong. The door was ajar, and the lock had been snapped clean off. Inside, my heart dropped. My canoe was missing. But that was just the beginning. Moments later, the unmistakable roar of a boat engine echoed across the lake. I ran to the edge of the shara and froze. Out in the middle of the water was Karen, and she wasn't alone. The engine screamed louder, and then a crash. The boat smashed directly into my dock. Wooden boards exploded into the air, splinters flying. The impact thundered through the trees, through my chest, through the bones of the place I called home. The dock I had built myself, plank by plank, was now shattered, half submerged in water, broken timbers floating like wreckage from a shipwreck. Standing at the helm of the stolen boat was Karen, one hand on the wheel, the other thrown into the air in triumph. Her expression was pure madness. Enjoying the show, Jack? She screamed over the engine's roar. This lake belongs to everyone. Think of it as my way of smashing your precious little rules. My fist clenched. Karen, stop. You are going to seriously hurt someone. But she just threw her head back and laughed, sharp and unhinged. That's when I noticed someone else on board. Rick. Her husband clung to the railing, knuckles white, his face a mask of silent terror. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, a broken bar, but no words came. The officer's warning echoed in my mind. She's unstable. Karen cranked the wheel, sending the boat into a sharp turn. Waves surged toward my deck, slamming the shoreline. The water climbed higher. My deck groaned under the pressure. I grabbed my phone and dialed emergency services. This is Jack Miller at the lake cabins. My boat has been stolen. Someone's destroying my property. I need help now. As I spoke, Karen hollered from the water. Go ahead. Call them. I'll just say you attacked me first. She jerked the wheel again, and the boat veered dangerously toward the rocks. Karen, stop, Rick shouted at last. You are going to flip us. But she didn't stop. Then it happened. The boat slammed into a submerged log. The motor coughed, the hull groaned, and the vessel pitched violently to one side. Rick went flying into the lake with a splash. Karen screamed as the boat tilted hard, water rushing over the edge. I didn't hesitate. I dove in. Again, the water was icy, but my body moved on instinct. I reached Rick first, pulling his panicked, flailing body toward the shore. Behind me, the boat was going under. Karen clung to the edge, screaming, Jack, Jack, help me, and I'll be honest, a part of me wanted to let her struggle, to let the mess she created swallow her whole, but I'm not that kind of person. I turned around, swam back, and reached for her arm. She fought me at first, gasping and clawing, but I held on. I dragged her through the water until we finally hit the shallow edge. We both collapsed, coughing and drenched. She glared at me through wet strands of hair. You a broken bar, you think this makes you the good guy? I shook my head, breathless. No, Karen, it just makes me a decent human being, as something you might want to try. In the distance, sirens wailed. The police had arrived again just in time to witness my boat sinking into the lake. Officers rushed down the hill, eyes darting between the wreckage and the soaked figures on the shore. What the hell happened here? The younger one asked, clearly alarmed. She stole my boat and crashed it, I said, pointing to the debris. Karen, still sputtering, shouted, he's lying. He tried to kill me. He rigged the boat. Rick stepped forward, shivering and pale. His voice trembled. No, a broken bar. She's not telling the truth. Jack saved our lives. She took the boat without permission. The older officer sighed, already reaching for his radio. Dispatch, we've got property damage, reckless endangerment, and a stolen vessel. We're bringing someone in. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, you're in serious trouble. You're under arrest." Karen's face twisted into rage. "You can't do this to me. I am the HOA president." The younger officer almost laughed. "And that doesn't make you above the law." As they cuffed her, she shrieked at me, "This isn't over, Jack. I'll destroy you. The HOA will crush you." They escorted her to the cruiser. Rick sat nearby on a rock, head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I looked at him, exhausted. "Why do you let her do this?" He didn't respond. He just stared blankly at the ground. That night, the lake was quiet again, but the peace was gone. My dock, my hard work, lay in pieces. Broken boards drifted across the water like ghosts. I sat on the deck, staring into the darkness, replaying every moment in my mind. I should have felt relieved. Karen was gone, arrested. But I didn't, because I knew the truth. People like Karen don't stay down for long. They come back stronger, louder, and meaner. And I was right. 2 days later, I found something slid under my cabin door. No envelope, no postage, just a folded note written in a familiar messy scrawl. It said, "Think you've won? You haven't. You don't know who you're messing with. You saved my life, Fia, but I won't spare yours. This is my neighborhood, my rules. Get ready, Jack. The real game starts now." My hands trembled as I read it. Taped to the bottom of the letter was a photo. It was of me sleeping in my bed. Someone had been inside my home. Before I could even process it, the lights inside my cabin flickered on. See a broken bar, then cut out completely. Darkness swallowed everything. I stood there frozen, knowing without a doubt Karen wasn't finished. Not even close. In the suffocating silence, I heard it. A soft creak. Someone was inside. A cold shiver crept up my spine. I held my breath, straining to listen. The only other sound was the gentle lapping of the lake beyond my shattered dock. I reached for the flashlight I kept near the couch, fumbling with the switch until the beam sliced through the dark. My living room appeared in the glow, silent, empty. But I knew I wasn't alone. Then the floor groaned again, this time from the hallway that led to my bedroom. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. No reply. I took a slow step forward, then another. The flashlight trembled in my grip. My heart hammered against my ribs. Suddenly a bang. A door slammed. I whipped the light toward the sound. The back door was wide open, swinging on its hinges, cold air rushing in. Whoever had been inside had just made their escape. I rushed to the doorway and scanned the backyard. Nothing but trees and shadows. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app connected to my home security system, but every feed showed static. All of my cameras had been disabled. Someone had gotten Nina and they knew exactly what they were doing. By morning, I was at the sheriff's office, explaining everything of the break-in, the threatening letter, the photo of me sleeping. Deputy Harris, the older officer from before, rubbed his temple as I spoke. "Jack, you need to understand something," he said slowly. "Karen's influence around here runs deep. The HOA board, half of them owe her favors. She's got ties with local officials. We'll take your statement a broken bar, but don't expect this to be simple." The younger officer, Daniels, leaned forward. "We'll keep an eye on your property, increase patrols, but honestly, you might want to stay somewhere else for a while." I shook my head. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere." Harris gave a weary sigh. "Suit yourself, but watch your back." When I returned, I found Rick sitting on my porch. He looked exhausted, eyes sunken, his clothes wrinkled. "She's out," he said quietly. I froze. "What?" "She was released this morning." A lawyer pulled some strings. "She's furious, Jack." I tried to calm her down. "A broken bar, but she's not listening to anyone." My fist clenched. "She broke into my house, Rick. She threatened my life." "I believe you," he said. "But you don't get it. Karen doesn't stop, not until she feels she's won." I narrowed my eyes. "Won what?" Rick looked toward the lake, then whispered, "Whatever she's planning next." That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the floor felt like footsteps. Every whisper of wind sent my nerves into overdrive. I kept my shotgun beside me and triple-checked every lock. Outside, the lake shimmered under the moonlight, serene, yet hiding something sinister. Around 2 a.m., I heard voices. Soft, close. I grabbed the flashlight and crept to the window. 2 figures stood near the ruins of my dock. One of them was unmistakably Karen, her blonde hair glowing under the pale moonlight. The other was a tall man I didn't recognize, broad-shouldered, quiet, They were unloading something from the back of a truck. I zoomed in with my phone camera and hit record. Barrels. They were unloading barrels. My stomach turned. What the hell were they doing? Poisoning the lake. I flung the front door open. What the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted.